Okay, good morning, afternoon, wherever you are. Just a reminder that this meeting will be recorded, and so anything you say will be available publicly online, so be mindful of that. So welcome to another SIG CLI meeting. We have a few announcements for today. Master is now open for 1.13 development, and yeah, basically just PRs are now able to emerge once again. We have a test grid update from Van. I'm hoping he's joined, but let's see if he's in the chat. Looks like he's not with us yet. So I guess we will go ahead and wait to see if Van joins us later and get a test coverage update. I did take a look at the test grid earlier and there was not much activity. So as of this morning, at least, we've had no failures, no recurring flakes or anything like that. So it should be good. A reminder that the test grid is essentially on call. So we do need volunteers to sign up and basically, share their time to watch the flakes for us and help resolve issues with tests. So if you essentially click on the Google Doc right below the test grid item, you'll be able to sign up and volunteer for 2 weeks. And we encourage you to do so if you have not already in the past. So with this said, we can move on to our topics for today. Our first one up is our 1.12 retrospective, which will be led by Paris. Paris, you have the floor.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Paris Pittman. I work at Google. I am a co-chair of the Special Interest Group for Contributor Experience. Quick plug that we have a survey out right now, and we would love for you to take it. I will paste the link into your meeting agenda today as well. But this will shape our priority list for the upcoming months as well as next year. And you all are contributors to Kubernetes, so you all should care. Thanks for everyone's work for 1.12. And during this retrospective, please feel free to write your thoughts down in the retro doc, especially if it's an improvement or a delta. Please put your name on next to it so that we can call on you so we can have some robust conversation. If you would like to say something anonymously, ping me in chat or Slack or something, and I'll find it and we can talk about it from, without a name attached. That's totally fine. In that same regard, please make sure that when you are talking about things that did not go that great, that it's a respectful, solution-oriented nugget of communication, and that it's not blaming an individual, so to speak, but blaming the process or tooling or something like that has some concrete feedback. Also, please mute when you're not speaking. It sounds like everybody's already muted right now, which is great. And since we only have a very short time period for this retro, we will need to respect the time boxes as well. Does anybody have any quick questions before we get started? Okay. And I'm not going to fib. I did not follow CLI this release, so I'm also kind of excited, selfishly, to hear what you did accomplish and what did go into the release. So this is also an education session for me, and I do apologize in advance. I don't know all of you by first name, so I may ask ahead of time if you could introduce yourself. All right. So first things first, follow up from the last retro for 1.11. Did you do what you said you would do? I took these bullets directly from the last retro doc. Yay for retros. And those 3 bullets are the following: compare plans with execution towards the end of the release based on the planning meeting, reviewing CLI related PRs, even though you're not the targeted reviewer, and especially where CLI is pinged, and then also a planning sheet creation. So did you do that?
I think we didn't do a planning sheet per se, although there is. So whenever we are doing a planning like we will be doing following this retro, we have the main goals for the SIG to work on. And we can easily identify whether the goals were were met. But I think, yeah, the tracking sheet is a good point that I completely forgot about, and I'm going to create one after this meeting.
Just a quick point. So I just noticed that in the kubectl repo in GitHub, there's a projects tab, and it provides some really decent tools to keep track of our current status, especially related to issues. Not sure if that would be a tool we'd want to use instead of just like a planning sheet. Maybe that might be a little bit more. That might give us a little bit more tooling to organize that. Not sure what you guys think or what your experience is with that projects tab at the kubectl repo.
I think that the planning tab in GitHub allows you only to work within your project itself, whereas what I was thinking and what we were doing so far at least is that within the main planning goals, we always link the issues in the futures repo, which is tracking the main themes for each SIG and basically the main issues that are being worked on for every release. And if that is possible within the planning section, I haven't looked too deep into it. Then perfectly, then we won't have to create any tracking sheet. Or eventually we can create a mirror issues from the features issue, which is sort of okay-ish.
Okay, I'll coordinate with you if you don't mind on how we will organize that if that's okay.
I also just put something in chat too. Contributor experience is using a project board on just the Kubernetes org, which lets us take issues in from other repos and things like that, which has helped us a ton. So I don't know if that's something you can use as well, and you all can create a board against that. All right, so we've already gone over our time, and I just butted in and took some of that, so I apologize. Does anybody have any last thoughts on what you said you were going to do for 111? All right. And then does anybody have any comments about what went well in 112?
I'm very proud that we managed to have the new plugin mechanism and that we extracted the libraries for writing the plugins, the CLI runtime, and we have the sample plugin. And big shout outs go to Juan for doing the majority of the work around it. And
can you spell his name for me?
Juan.
Nashik, you were breaking up for me for quite a bit of that. Can you repeat just really quickly? I apologize.
So big shout outs to yeah.
Appreciate it, Nashik.
And second of all, we've managed to fix a lot of the kubectl internals so that they are that will allow us to eventually extract the kubectl to a separate repo. That will be the most important things from my perspective in the 112 release.
What was the technical details of the very first one when you were talking about the runtime? That's where you were breaking up for me a little bit.
That's a library that we extracted for plugin authors.
Anyone else? Sean? You? Anyone? Juan?
I just put the +1 on the plugins. Good job, Juan.
Thanks.
What did, just out of my, just for curiosity's sake, what did you ship for 112?
Sure. So we have a few items in the agenda from weeks prior where we noted this down, but primarily the things we did was improvements around server-side printing for kubectl get. We had deliverables like plugins. We essentially had, I believe, improved testing. Sean started, with good leeway towards eliminating dependencies that kubectl has on the core repo, which is a big goal we have for the near future. So I'd say, in summary, it was basically, essentially infrastructure. I would say infrastructure cleanup and features like plugins that were delivered.
It sounds like a lot of work. So what could have gone better?
I'm gonna name the same item that I named before, which is the refactorings and cleaning the kubectl bits so that it is easier and we are able to faster extract the kubectl repo. I think if we put enough energy, more of us, and spend a little bit more time, we can get that one better.
Anyone else?
So I guess for the roadmap visibility item, to sort of piggyback on Sean's idea, I think Sean's proposed idea of using something like the project section in the repo, I think that would address our visibility problem to the extent that we have it.
Just as a quick plug, at the top of the sheet, I put 5 separate, under current status, I put 5 separate links to the 3 of them to current issues, 1 of them to recently merged PRs, and then 1 of them to the test grid. I just thought I'd try that out, see what you guys think, to address this same visibility issue, to keep us focused and to have a very easy place to find out what the current status of what we're working on right now. Yeah, just thought I'd plug that and see what you guys think.
Definitely. I think at the very least, it's a good, kind of feels like an index for, people that are members of the SIG to, I guess, quickly track down what needs to be done.
So in addition, just to continue on that, I triaged all of the issues, almost all of them, maybe 1 or 2, but I went over probably about 100 issues and added some labels, and I did a very quick first pass at prioritizing those. And so if you'd like to, if you need to reprioritize, please do. I'm hoping to keep that as clean and as current as possible. I'll be working hard to make sure that our issues are representative and that there's a clean database of those that we can, we can always visit that and have a good idea of where we're at and what we should be working on.
All right, sorry about that, I was typing. Just wanted to dig in a little bit to the refactoring. I think, was it Meshik said that? Especially the need to put more energy and time into this. Was there other items or did problems come up that would take away time and energy from contributors and focusing on that, or it just wasn't a priority?
So I'd say mainly I guess we need a methodology in place for it. So a more well-defined approach. But yeah, aside from that, I don't think there was anything particularly blocking that was preventing anyone from exercising their contributions. With that being said, something I've noticed lately that I have liked is so Sean lately has been going through issues in the kubectl repo and essentially tagging the appropriate person that would be the main area, like that has the main area of knowledge behind that issue, for example. And so I think for me at least that's helped helped me to respond faster to issues that I otherwise would have probably caught days later.
Is that enough too? Like, I know some folks get tagged on so many issues that they can't view them through mail very effectively, and going to the page gives them a lot of spam. Like, do we want to go one step further and have like a separate source, or do you think what we're doing is sufficient?
So I do definitely agree that email filters definitely do not help when you get tagged on a bunch of issues. So I guess if there is an alternative way to ping people, maybe Slack, we could have like, I don't know, a way to maybe have the bot on GitHub know to ping people on Slack if it's something that needs immediate attention or things like that. But I think that helps.
We could probably even start with just manually pinging people on Slack for like some experiment driven time. And then if it's like, oh yeah, this is really a lot better, we could write a bot to do it or something like that.
I think that sounds good. And particularly because, so at least with Matcha, for example, things I've done in the past is if I run into an issue, for example, that I need him to approve a PR or it's an issue relevant to his area of expertise, then I put it on his radar, so to speak, by directly linking it to him on Slack. And he knows that if it's on Slack, it should probably receive immediate attention. So yes, I like that approach.
Sean, thoughts?
Yeah, since I just went through all of the issues, and I actually assigned a couple of them. Yeah, it doesn't. I'm not as tuned into what is and isn't rising up on my radar, since I'm kind of the one who organized that initially.
I think the question, just more specifically, I think a question I had was like, thank you, first of all, thank you also for doing that. I think we've already said it's appreciated, but it's definitely great to have you doing that. And just like, would it be a huge burden to also ask you to, when you ping someone on the issue, to maybe just throw it in Slack if it seems like something we want someone to look at for sure?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that, especially if it's one of our P1 or P0 items, that's totally appropriate. I think if we think it's maybe a P2 or P3 issue, maybe, we wouldn't need to, to go to those lengths. But definitely, I think on the P1 and the P0 issues, that's more than appropriate.
It's like any bugs, for instance, maybe.
Yeah, that's also a good way.
Feel free to come to contributor experience too, because we're always testing and doing stuff that we think might improve from an automation perspective, your experience on how you assign people and stuff like that. And I know Christoph and others in the crew would be super stoked to talk to you about how we can do that. So we can take that conversation offline. All right. And then we are wrapping this up. What can we do differently for 113 and beyond? Yeah,
so I think a few of the items we covered just now regarding, pinging pinging people on Slack for P1s and P0s, for example, to ensure immediate attention to something is something that I think would be useful. Perhaps using the projects tab on the GitHub repo, to add visibility to our current features that we need to deliver and who's delivering them and all of that would help as well. So yeah, I basically think that all of the ideas we've discussed in the past couple minutes are things that'll allow us to behave differently in 113, but will add positive change to our workflow.
Anyone else?
I'll volunteer to start the effort on the projects tab, just as an experiment to see if we like it.
Sounds great.
Anyone else that hasn't spoken yet? Everyone thought that this release went sparkling well. It was so boring that you hope all releases go like this in the future.
Yeah,
Sounds like you have some small actionable things that can be accomplished. Sorry, Phil, go ahead.
I was going to say one thing to consider in the future is when we do eventually move control out of the core repo, we can begin to decouple it from the main release. And so the retrospectives might look different, and we might, like, planning on a 3-month cycle maybe look different. And maybe that's the wrong scope. Maybe it should be 6 months, or maybe it should be 1 month. That's all.
Anyone else? No? If so, that's it for the retro. All right. May future releases be equally as boring. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Paris.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
So with that, we are ready to move on to the next topic. And thank you again, Paris, for leading the retrospective. So our next topic in our agenda today is 113 planning. We've laid down a few topics that we think are core to the 113 discussion. However, if you do not see a topic that you feel like it's important to the 113 timeline, please feel free to add it to this list as well at this time. So starting out, we have server-side printing improvements. We have 2 issues linked to this, mainly around improving watches for kubectl get, sorting improvements for kubectl get, as well as promoting server-side printing to GA, and deprecating the old printing paths. So as you're aware, having moved to server-side printing has meant that we still have the code for the old printers within the kubectl tree, and it would be nice to be able to completely remove any dependencies on that code, if there are any. If not, completely remove that code from the kubectl tree. Another item we wish to have for 113 is promoting plugins to beta. So right now, plugins are still in alpha despite the major rewrites. We hope that by moving them to beta, it will give users more confidence on the system and essentially promote a sense of reliability with the current API, so to speak, so that authors are more inclined to write something for the long term rather than with the expectation that their plugins will break in the next release. With that being said, we also are looking towards kubectl independence. So Sean has created I believe a sheet with, I don't have permission in here, but pretty much it's a Google sheet with a a list of dependencies required to be broken in order for kubectl to be seamlessly split out of the core repo. These are mainly dependencies that essentially have kubectl depend on mostly server-side helpers, API helpers, and things like that. And we wish to either move those helpers to a separate repo that is shared by the core repo on kubectl, or move them into the kubectl tree if they're only used by kubectl. So at this time, if anybody would like to particularly go into detail about any of these items, you have the floor.
I have a quick question, Juan. So in order to accomplish this kubectl independence, it sounded like there was still some dependencies within the describe, which I think was related to your moving over to server-side printing. Is that correct?
So there are two topics with this. Server-side printing is with regards to getters, to get commands, and we agree that we are going to copy over the current printers as is, and since if we are lucky, we will deprecate the printers, which basically means we will freeze them as is inside of the kubectl subtree, and they will be as is over there. So that will break the dependency on the printers. Secondly is the describers, and I need to think with Clayton about his idea of describers. Around it is we need to externalize the describer because they are very tied to kubectl itself. I'm not convinced that much that they should move to the server side as with the gets. So, and there are some technical difficulties around what we should be getting through the describe. I think that at the current state, it will probably be part of the regular kubectl. So we will just externalize them and move over to the kubectl.
We haven't made any progress on describe on the server side in the last couple of releases while we were focused on Git. So I think that that's a pretty pragmatic approach. Like there were some arguments originally around what the format might look like. So it's definitely something that's going to take a couple of releases to sort out, and I wouldn't want that to block, the short-term stuff. We can definitely try to get it under the 113. And there's some ideas, but it's a very high-level, vague idea rather than something concrete.
From the technical point of view, we were discussing some issues around how much of the data you should be putting inside of describers, how you get them, depending on the user permissions, etc., because every single describe is collecting additional bunch of data to present to users. Having that on the user side solves a lot of the issues by default because we are always working in the context of a user, whereas doing that server side would allow additional complexity to be implemented to fulfill the same requirements. So that was the discussion that we had with Huan, and that would be probably the simplest approach. And
yeah, although the risk of a security exposure that way is a lot higher. And we originally were like, oh, describers are going to be really complex, and we're going to go do this cool stuff. But the current set of describers are doing a fairly minimal set of special case logic. And until we have a story for CRDs, I have struggled to imagine what we would do for CRDs that would make them useful. And so if we can't come up with something that's going to make CRDs useful, the effort to come up with a generic solution on the server side is kind of bound up by that. So maybe we want to focus by saying, how do we make a good CRD describer? And what are like the minimum things that get us a better user experience than what we have today? And is it worth it? And maybe we just I mean, I'm somewhat biased. If we can't come up with a good describers thing that's going to be better than what we have, leaving the external types in kube control for another couple of releases doesn't sound like the end of the world.
And then
Yeah,
we
and
still
was that,
have to.
I was just gonna say, like, I think we discussed in the past, or last SIG CLI meeting, that we just copy, like, we could copy that step over, right? Or that's what we described just a few minutes ago. So if we left the describers in, it wouldn't block making forward progress on decoupling, right?
Yeah, as long as they're external.
And then additionally, at the same time, there's the plugin where we haven't solved the idea of being able to override the built-in commands. If we tackle the problem, or we allow people to extend the built-in commands such as that you will be able, through a plugin mechanism, to describe your CRD, that will also solve the problem for the CRD. And this is an issue that was raised several times. People have been asking about that one. We will have to solve the problem sooner or later. So I think that I would prefer to focus on these items in the midterm as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I would say that so long as we are not ending up with some core kube control dependencies on user-written plugins, so long as we can keep completely any user-written plugins that describe their particular CRD completely decoupled from the actual core kube control logic, I think that could be a viable solution, at least in the meantime, for people that create custom resources. So that being said, I guess.
Phil, you want to add your dynamic create to that list of 113 items? I remember you promised that you are going to have some sort of alpha type of a solution by KubeCon North America. Yeah, so basically that fits into the 113 release. You're signing up yourself for that one?
Yeah, I mean, I was planning on doing it out of the main repo as a demo. I'd be happy to do it inside the main repo if that's something we thought we actually wanted in.
And inside of OC, we have a separate branch that introduces a experimental commands. I'm not sure how people are feeling about introducing some kind of sandbox playground where we would be saying, here are some sample commands that you can try out, but we're just saying that they will change, they might change significantly. These are all alpha. You can play with it. You can, provide feedback, but we're not taking responsibility for you to run them. Or rather, people would prefer to go through a alpha plugins, promote them somehow, and then eventually, when we are happy with, then we will be including them in a core kubectl. I don't know how others feel about it.
Yeah, would those be available to people, or they'd have to download? They'd have to compile kube control themselves.
For plugins, you'd have to download. For built-in external experiment, and it will be as a normal subcommand under the kubectl. There will be kubectl ex, and then will be the experimental commands that you can try out. But we are hands off. This is fully experimental. If you break your cluster, that's your fault.
Okay.
Not sure how.
Yeah. I like the experimental plugins.
Yeah, because basically the create command that we discussed, the dynamic create, will be something that we will want to have as part of the kubectl core repo, which will eventually replace all of the create, all of the set commands, and probably a couple others, right?
Yeah. For that specific one, why don't I build it as a plugin first? And then that way, we can always just copy the code over or make it rendered or do whatever we want, but at least it can be installed more easily.
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds good for me.
Sounds good to me as well. So with that being said, I guess if there are no more specific topics of discussion around splitting out kube control, does anybody else have any other topics for 113 planning, or does anybody have anything else to focus on that's already on there? So like watches or sorting improvements. I think everything's pretty self-explanatory, and I feel like we've covered describers to a good extent to begin maybe crafting a proposal around this. So if someone's interested, or maybe I could create a Google Doc for the next meeting that will sort of solidify our direction with describers further. Since we do seem to have a few paths to choose from with regards to that. So with that being said, and if there are no more topics, we can officially move to stand-ups.
So just as a quick note, we have umbrella issues in our repo for the kubectl independence that we're using to also help track the PRs. I was wondering if there were umbrella issues, or if somebody wanted to create umbrella issues for these other efforts. For the so the plugins, I guess, is already that's already been put in, but for the server-side printing, maybe we would want to create an umbrella issue. I'm not sure that I don't think I saw one in our repo. Oh, is there?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
There are features issues on the server-side printing.
Okay.
When we have the project thing, we need to sync to the two of us how to do it properly. When we have the project board set up correctly, we will link them together, and then we can additionally link the additional PRs together for that. So
got it.
That sounds good. So yeah, I guess having an issue under kube control rather than features, I think that would help at the very least. Solidify.
That should help.
Okay.
By the way, Sean, I went ahead this morning. And closed 2 of the umbrella issues for the kubectl extraction, and linked to just one, because I figured out that it would be easier to track one issue rather than 3 separate that are basically covering the same topic. I'm not sure, have you seen my comment on it? Asking for you to provide either the link to the Google Doc, or maybe provide a list of the items that are left, so that it will be easier for us to track the progress, what is still left to be extracted, or to break the link.
I'll put some more effort into that to make it clear what else is we think is necessary
with the main repo. Awesome, thanks very much.
Okay, does anybody else have any more 113 discussion topics? Okay. Hearing none, let's move on to stand-ups. So Sean, would you like to talk about our intro and deep dive sessions that we'll be doing at KubeCon?
Yes, so we just recently received emails that both our intro and deep dive, SIG CLI intro and deep dive sessions were accepted into KubeCon Seattle. And currently we're planning on having myself and Munchie do the presentation for the intro session, and Mache and Juan will be doing the deep dive session, specifically talking about the new plugin mechanism. As we know, the KubeCon is the 11th through the 13th of December in Seattle. If you haven't signed up, please do. One of the things that I was hoping to bring up to this crowd was, do we want to have a SIG CLI? There's going to be a contributor summit the day before, but I was hoping that we could get the SIG CLI folks together in order to dig into a more a look at the strategy and the vision and the long-term goals that we have. A lot of what we're talking about in these meetings is tactics, and it feels like maybe we don't have quite the, what does KubeCuddle look like in 2 to 3 years? And maybe if there's a critical mass of us at Seattle, that we can have a meeting and try to at least come to some agreement on some of the long-term goals for KubeCuddle and for SIG CLI. I'm not sure. What does everybody think about that? How many of us are going to be at KubeCuddle or KubeCon?
I'm going there. Juan's coming. You said you will be there, Menji. I'm hoping Phil will show up as well, because he promised to show me the awesome dynamic create. I'm hoping some other, both newcomers and additional folks will be able to show up as well. So I think the necessary majority that you've mentioned should be available there. And I'm more than happy to have that discussion that you just mentioned. Do you think we can get a room for I don't know, an hour or two, or how long is it necessary for us to,
I'm pretty sure we
try sit down?
Yeah,
why don't you talk with Paris and see if
I'll talk with Paris to see if we could get a room, and I'll float some ideas on the dates. I plan on showing up on a Sunday, the day before the night before the contributor get together, and so maybe we could do it even before the official KubeCon starts. We'll figure out those details later. I just wanted to get a feel for what you guys think about. Let's meet face to face, have a high bandwidth conversation on some of the things that are difficult to do over VC. Try to get some agreement on some long-term goals.
Yeah, definitely. I think, at least for me, I think that'll really help, especially to actually meet everybody in person, and I feel like at least in that mode, it'd be a lot easier to, I guess, have a better perspective on the future and agree on long-term goals.
Yeah, go for it. I'm heading to Seattle on Saturday. I should be there, recovering for at least probably the entire KubeCon with the 9-hour jet lag. But yeah, I'm available since Saturday afternoon, basically.
Got it.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll probably be there that Sunday. David will also be joining us, I believe. So be good to get his at least introductions there. Perfect. Does anybody else have anything related to KubeCon that they'd like to mention or discuss? Okay. Hearing none, I will give people probably a minute back. I'm not sure how much we have left, but yes, we're going to wrap up the meeting. Thank you everybody for attending, and we'll see you out there.